all the things that you think you're supposed to do to be a good fundraiser, don't be afraid to do them, and don't be afraid of the fact that you will hear no. That's it. That's the more reps you put in for volume number of people, and the more you hear no, the more you'll realize, oh, I'm going to hear a lot of yeses along the way too.
Yeah.
So for me, it's all about making sure you're putting in the reps over and over and over again. Because the more you do that, you develop, I know this sounds funny, muscle memory that even though I heard a no now, I've heard 5 yeses already. And so I think young fundraisers get caught up trying to get the big whale right off the bat instead of doing all the right little things along the way that sets up multiple asks for multiple mid-sized whales. So that when the big whale comes along, you're not taken back, you're not scared, because you've done the right things at the right time, and you've cultivated habits in your life that say, I know how to do this. Let's just take it the next step and add the 0 at the end of the ask.
Welcome to the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast. Whether you are a seasoned professional or a first-time fundraiser, we have the advice you need to take your next step toward major gift mastery. I'm your host, Tom Dauber, President of Abundant Vision Philanthropic Consulting. Let's get on with the show.
I think there's another Kenyon story which I really appreciate. Ended up closing early on and hired this woman. She had the rating of like $100,000 and stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, we'll see. And, it was right away, she wanted to talk about estate planning. And so as we talked about it, it became apparent she didn't have any kids. She didn't have anything else to tie her down. And she was one of the first female lawyers in Tennessee. After going through Kenyon College she was one of the first classes of women who graduated in the 70s from Kenyon, and then she went to Vandy. It was one of the first female graduates of the Vanderbilt Law School back in the early 70s. And so she was a pioneer, and she credits that to learning and being in Kenyon during her time in college. And so when we started talking about different things for her estate, she's like, I think I want to leave a good gift. I'm like, okay, so what are you thinking about? It ended up being a $250,000 gift. But it took a while. It took many conversations. But as we talked more, I was like, would you be willing to tell your story on a bigger level? She's like, sure, what's that look like? And so we had this thing called the Abraham Society of people who've been giving every year for, I think you had to give it at least 5 years, and she was on year 30 or something like that.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
She established a habit and kept doing it. And so she loved the idea. And so I ended up recording an interview and helping her tell her story to inspire others to give. And then, about 4 or 5 months after that gift, she was like, Jason, my RMDs, I'm just now getting them this year. What do I, she's like, it's going to impact me a lot. I don't know if I can give. I'm like, actually, have you just thought about using your RMDs just to be your giving? She goes, what do you mean? I'm like, and so I explained how a QCD works from her IRA and all that. And required minimum distribution is RMD. I should explain some of these terms.
Yeah. No, that's helpful.
So at 71 or 72 at that time, I think it was 71 and a half at the time. Now I think it's going to be moving to 73 in 25. Is that what it is?
I think so.
So at the age of 71 and a half back then, they had to take a required minimum distribution from their IRA. And for a lot of baby boomers who have planned well, that can bump them into the next tax bracket. And so the goal, I just was honest with her. I was like, you can use that if you go straight from your IRA to a nonprofit, and it becomes a tax credit for you, especially at the level that you're talking about. And she's like, wow, like she was so excited. And so she was annually giving like anywhere between $2,500 and $5,000 a year because she had other things she wanted to give to. And she was honest with me. She was like, it's about $28,000 a year that I'm supposed to be getting. And I'm like, yeah, that'll bump you into the next bracket, wouldn't it? And she's like, it will. And so I was like, all right, so what would you like to do with that? She's like, can I give? And she was like, I want to do 15 to Kenyon and then the other 13 to other things. I was like, well, I can help you with the part to Kenyon. So we got it to the point where she was able to give 3 times what she was normally giving on an annual basis. And so like the college is excited about that because she's giving to all the operating budgets.
Right. Right.
And she's excited about it. And her $250,000 estate gift will help with some specific programs that she wanted to help. And so like I look at a story like that, for me it was really meaningful because again, it was a woman who was a pioneer and who may not have gotten the recognition she deserved because she was a single woman, a lawyer all her career, pioneering in her career, pioneering every time she went anywhere for education. And it was a moment for her just to see the fruit of her labor, to be able to give back to the things she really wanted to give back to a place that really helped form who she was. And I loved it because I got to empower her story and empower her voice by doing the interviews that we recorded that were going to get used at different spaces to help feature her story in different ways in our magazines and our writings. And yeah, I think, and she was as sweet as could be. She was the ultimate advocate for me. And so when she found out that I was leaving the position to take on the role of CDO for Vineyard USA, she was so excited for me. And so there's a sweetness about her relationship and that I had with her. It's just, yeah, I think she's the most meaningful gift. And honestly, ironically, she was the very first gift I ever raised at Kenyon.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a significant one. So just for our listeners, I want to kind of I want to kind of break down the anatomy of this gift if we could. So
Sure.
you inherited her when you came on at
Mhm.
Kenyon. So you had this person, you could see that she was a consistent donor in that 2,500 to 5,000. So that would probably be kind of a decent annual giving person, but not somebody super remarkable. Is that right?
Yep.
And did you have some sense of wealth rating for her from research?
The research said she was about, if she would give at full capacity, be $100,000 gift.
Okay. And you knew because of the institutional history written down in your CRM, and I know I'm kind of breaking this down at a very basic
Sure.
fundamental level,
Go
spelling
for it.
things out, but you'd be surprised. Not everybody, is raising money with the type of foundation you and I have had. So you knew that she had capacity for 100,000. At least that's what research told you. She had a 30-year giving of history at a reasonable level. You also probably knew she was single, right?
Mm, yeah, I did.
And
I had to do my own research on that
mhm,
because it looked like she was single based in our database,
mhm,
but it wasn't verified. No one had,
gotcha.
and so I did a fair amount of research to verify that piece.
Okay. And then you also knew that she had a professional degree and had been sort of a successful person, kind of a pioneer in her field, right?
Mhm.
Okay. And so, when you see those things, that's definitely, alarm bell is going off. This is a person I should go talk to. And so once you got to know her and got to have some of those conversations, well, that initial conversation you had with her, she immediately brought up an estate gift. Is that right?
I asked her.
Yeah.
I brought it up, and I said, "So, as you're thinking about giving, you've been giving for 30 years. Like, have you thought about what estate planning looks like? And if so, have you thought about including Kenyon?" And she was like, "I have thought about estate planning." She goes, "And I am thinking about Kenyon, but I don't know what."
Now, was that your first meeting with her when you started talking about estate giving?
Uh, I brought it up. So when I walk through conversations with people,
Yes.
I kind of set the agenda right off from the start.
Yeah.
And I'm honest with people and I say, "Hey, part of this time is I am a fundraiser. So the first half of this conversation, I'm going to ask you lots of questions just to get to know you, hear your story, and see how Kenyon's impacted you along the years and how what that means to you."
Yeah.
And I said, "And at some point, I'm also going to put on my fundraising hat for a hot second and ask you some fundraising questions. And if you're open to them, great. If not, and you want to pick back up at a different time, I'll do that too." And so she was great with that.
Tom Dauber here for Abundant Vision Academy. Are you a nonprofit leader who's new to fundraising? Are you feeling crushed by your fundraising goals and not sure how to find success? My online class, Crafted from my 25 years of experience and more than 5,000 donor meetings, Abundant Vision Academy will give you the confidence and understanding you need to start building relationships with donors and having gift discussions in just 110 minutes. You'll get 14 videos covering all the topics you need to find success in fundraising. You can take it at your own pace and can watch as many times as you'd like. This is one of the best deals in fundraising continuing education you can get today. To make sure you get off to a strong start in 2024, I'm offering a 50% discount to anyone signing up for my course this spring. That's a $375 value. Enter the coupon code SPRING2024 at checkout to claim your 50% discount. That's SPRING 2024. Head on over to thomas-dauber-s-school.teachable.com and click on Abundant Vision Academy to get your discount today. The link is in the podcast description.
You know, when she started telling me about her career, how she's been single all her life, she even told me, I think it was her brother was also a Kenyon alum, and that's what caused her to really want to go there. I look at it and I just said, okay, hey, it's time for me to put on my other hat if it's okay. So I'm going to ask a couple questions. I noticed that you give. First, I want to say thanks for the years of giving that you've given. And I said, so can you tell me two things? Is this an ad hoc thing you do at the end of the year, or is this a budget line item? And she's like, oh, for me, it's a budget line item. I was like, okay, cool. So why does Kenyon win that spot in your budget line? And she told me. She told me how much it meant to her. And I said, okay, that's great. So there are ways to give that people can make really big impacts for the college. Is that something you'd be interested in hearing about? And she said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, and that's when I just laid out the different ways people can give. Everything from securities to estates. And she was like, she's like, I have thought about estate planning. And that's how that conversation started.
Oh, that's great. I mean, a lot of folks might be afraid to start talking about death and those sorts of things in a first meeting, but this is a great example of, if you approach it from the right perspective, it doesn't have to be a scary thing.
Nope.
And I think estate giving for some fundraisers, especially as they're getting started, can feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's great to see that example, because the reality is that this single woman, I presume that she was, I know that she was in her 70s based on your conversation about, the IRA distributions. That's something you think about when you're single,
Mm-hmm.
and
And
that, yeah, go ahead.
that was actually part of the conversation. She's like, I want to make sure I have enough to live off of. And I'm like, okay, so what's that look like for you? And as she saw it happen and realized that, she was like, oh, I can make something like this happen on a bigger level. Like, that's when she started putting the numbers together and she got really excited.
That's great. That's great. So what you did is you saw a lot of patterns emerging just on paper, and that tipped you off. This is the person to talk to. You did kind of an investigative interview with the individual, both to get to know her, but also then to understand, why does she give to you? Why is Kenyon important? And as you saw, the Kenyon was very important to her, and really had a line item budget in her annual, spending plan. It's a really easy conversation then to ask, well, would you like that to continue on after you're gone? You've been giving for so long, right? And then that began to open up in her mind ways that she could accomplish more than maybe she ever thought she could before.
Yeah.
That's great. There's some good lessons there, I think for our listeners. So how did you steward her giving ultimately?
Oh, so for me, it came down to helping her tell her story and also helping her connect with the college on a different level. So when her 50th reunion came around, I said, I talked to our 50th reunion director. I said, could you make sure you reach out to see if she's would like to be on the committee? And she was like, absolutely. And so that was one of the things that she loved doing. She loved being part of that committee and just being able to reconnect with some of her old friends on a Zoom call every couple months to start planning their 50th reunion. And she was super excited. And when she came When I was down in Tennessee, I tried to connect with her, but never worked out. But when she came up for reunion, she and I spent time just on the porch talking. And she just loved the fact that someone from the college cared
Yeah.
over and over. And,
Yeah.
I would also send her cards for Christmas and just say, hey, as you're thinking about the new year, or know that we're excited that all the things that are coming before you. And I'd list off the things that she told me because I took plenty of notes in my CRM about our conversations. And, for me, one of the things I do in my CRM, I put up reminders. If there's something coming up for a donor on in their personal life that they're thinking through, or that they've showed some anxiety about, like, going on, I don't mind reaching out the day of, saying, hey, I'm thinking about you today. Hope you do well. And especially if they're good on text message, then it makes it super easy because it doesn't have to be long and elaborate. It can be a simple touch point. And so making sure that I'm on point with stewardship means I have to document it well and actually put reminders in when I need it.
No, that's great. That's fantastic. So this podcast, I think I mentioned earlier, it ultimately exists to help less experienced fundraisers, especially in the smaller nonprofit world, gain some of the wisdom and insights on major gifts that they might miss out on working at a smaller shop,
Sure.
where in many cases there's only one fundraiser.
Mm-hmm.
As we close, do you have any words of wisdom for them?
Put in the reps. Like, make sure that the reps that you're putting in are the right reps. Make sure you're actually thinking creatively in how you steward people. And it doesn't have to be hugely extensive, but it does need to be meaningful and timely.
When you say put in the reps, spell that out a little bit further.
Right, little things along the way that sets up multiple asks for multiple mid-sized whales. So that when the big whale comes along, you're not taken aback, you're not scared, because you've done the right things at the right time, and you've cultivated habits in your life that say, I know how to do this. Let's just take it the next step and add the zero at the end of the ask. Like, it's all the same. It's just a matter of doing the right things at the right time in the right way.
That's great. Yeah, there's one other thing I wanted to ask you to share. I heard you once talk about earning your no.
Mm-hmm.
What's that mean?
It means you keep asking it in appropriate ways, in appropriate times, asking about opportunities that person could have. And guess what? More times than not, a no is actually a not for now. For instance, who was it? It was that older gentleman I told you about in North Carolina. I had so many, I can't meet with you this time around. I can't meet with you this time around. It took me 18 months to land the dang first visit. But as soon as I did, within 6 months, we had a gift of $500,000. And so don't be afraid to earn the not for now, and only realize that a no is truly a no. And when a person says, don't ever call me. And it's okay if they say that.
That's right. That's great.
Don't be afraid of it. Like, that's why I say, earn your no.
Wow. Well, Jason, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. I certainly hope you'll come back and join us again sometime.
Oh, thanks. It was a pleasure.
Well, that does it for this week's episode. Now, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please be sure to subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast provider. As always, I'm your host, Tom Dauber. Thank you for joining me as we journey together toward major gift mastery on the Abundant Vision Fundraising Podcast.